Hi guys, this week I wanted to leave you just a quick video that talks about some elements of writing a good essay. This will cover your thesis statement discussion and your introduction and conclusion discussion. So the first thing I wanted to look at was just what an essay structure very broadly looks like. An essay generally will have an introduction, a bunch of supports, and a conclusion. Now, one thing to note is that some of you may have learned 5-paragraph essay structure in high school. That is a super starting place. For those of you who haven't learned it, 5-paragraph essay structure basically asks you to construct a 3-point thesis that says what your main idea is, the 3 things you're going to use to support your essay. And then from there, you're going to build an essay based on that 3-point thesis statement, where you pull 1 point from each of those 3 points in your thesis and develop it further in an essay. So that's your 5-paragraph essay, and then of course there's the conclusion. That's a really good starting point because it basically shows you what an essay should do. What we're really looking at is the introduction that says the big idea in a thesis. We're looking at different ways of supporting that, and then a conclusion. The problem people run into who rely a lot on 5-point essay structure in college is that most college essays ask you to think beyond or move outside of that 3-point thesis. And often you'll be writing more than 5 paragraphs. So part of what I'd like you to do if you have practiced that structure before is just think about expanding it, use it as a guideline, but we're going to move further than that and build much larger essays, much more complex thesis statements. So the first point I wanted to cover with you guys was the thesis statement, since we have a discussion really looking at that from 2 angles. A thesis statement shows your reader the path or direction that your paper will take. That's why I have the map here, is just to show you that's your main direction. Your thesis needs to encompass all the major points of your paper, so all the landmarks. That doesn't mean that in your thesis you have to say everything that you'll argue, but it does need to be the broadest statement of purpose, the broadest statement of idea within the essay. Now, I'm talking about your thesis as an argument, and it doesn't mean necessarily that something that others disagree with, but it's going to be the concept that drives your essay. And it's going to be the main idea that you need to support with the content of your essay. So a thesis should not be something obvious. If I say to you, hey, this table, it's solid, it's not a great thesis statement because it doesn't take a lot of evidence. You'll be convinced pretty quickly by that, right? All you have to do is come and hit the table too, and there we go, that's a solid table. So you want to think about what kind of statement you're making that needs to be supported. Going back to the table, if I said to you something like, this table is not just a utilitarian table, it's a work of art, I might then need to support that claim by showing you what's so artistic about the table we're looking at. So in your thesis, you're making that broad statement that needs to be supported. Your topic sentences will then keep your reader moving through the major ideas within your thesis. Each topic sentence should connect back to your thesis in some way. You can think about them as a mini thesis statement for your paragraph. I often think about the relationship between the thesis statement and topic sentences as being something where if you took that thesis statement in each topic sentence, you would have a pretty good summary of what the essay is going to say. It wouldn't have all the detail, it wouldn't have all the explanation, but it would tell your reader the main points that you want to develop. So another way to think about that is with the forest and the trees analogy. If your thesis is a forest, right, I'm looking at it and saying, hey, look at this big forest of ideas, your topic sentence is going to be one tree within that forest. Maybe we've got this lovely oak tree sitting here, right? And the body will then describe that tree. Oh, the oak tree has leaves, branches, there's a squirrel giving us its opinion of what it thinks of us. Look at the bark, right? All those details that come into making that tree will be the body of your paragraph. The tree itself is in the topic sentence. The thesis is the large forest that we're examining. All right. So once you've got your thesis, once you're ready to go with the essay, there are going to be three main things we want to look at. The first is the introduction. So an introduction should pull your reader in somehow. That's really why I've got this hyper frog over in the corner. It might be a fact, an anecdote. It might be a statement that connects your idea to a larger reader. You might then provide background or set up the importance of the argument you're making. And in some ways, I think about the introduction as kind of your chance to lay the foundations, let your reader know what they need to know before they start with your main idea in the thesis. Your thesis then, traditionally, is the last sentence of an introduction. I'm sure you've seen in your own reading, and we can definitely talk about this more as the semester goes on, the thesis doesn't always have to be the last sentence of an introduction. But that's definitely the place your reader will most commonly expect to see it. All right, we'll then start building supports. And one model that I really like to look at with supporting paragraphs is this pie model. This will bring us back to topic sentences. So each paragraph beyond your introduction should give your reader the point that you're going to make within that paragraph, the information that you need to use to support that point that you're making, and your own explanation for that information. Remember, in academic writing, you need the information, but at least as important, if not more important, will be your own ideas and your own interpretation of the information. So after you make those supporting paragraphs, you then get to the conclusion. The task in the conclusion is to wrap your essay up with a pretty bow like that pink one on the side there. Make sure the reader remembers what you've been saying. Now, really importantly, do not copy and paste the thesis. That just looks sloppy. But you should refer back to your thesis. So remind the reader, use different words, different ideas, but bring that thesis back into focus. You shouldn't have new information in your conclusion. The conclusion should just be wrapping everything up. If you have more information, you're not done writing. And it should just be a neat send-off. The other thing I really, really encourage you to do is avoid using the phrase "in conclusion." Again, that's just kind of a tidiness thing. It's, if your conclusion doesn't say to your reader that you're concluding by the way that you're writing things, the tone you're writing in, revise it. Okay, next part. You're also going to need to look at outlining this week. So outlining can often be used as a pre-writing strategy. That said, reverse outlining can also be really useful for understanding readings better. It can be really cool also for getting a peer review back to just hear from people what they think your main points were. Most commonly, though, we'll use it the way we're doing it in this week's discussion, which is as a pre-writing strategy to help you organize your thoughts before you write. Your thesis in an outline will be your initial or working thesis. What that really means practically is you are not stuck with that thesis. You can revise it. You can refine it. Just get something out there. So it may be something as simple as the question that you're going to be answering, your initial thoughts on the answer to that, your thoughts about a text that you're responding to. In our case, it will be the initial thought you have about the so what question of why you're telling the story that you're going to be telling in your narrative. So you'll get that thesis going. Your topic sentences then will be the main points in your outline. So you'll be thinking right away about what key ideas you want to use to develop that thesis. And it'll start narrowing your paragraphs down, chunking out your ideas. So an outline will generally look like this, and this is 5 paragraphs, but like I said, you're not limited to 5 paragraphs. So your intro will give us hook, background, thesis. Supports will give us your topic sentence, your evidence, your information, right? Your explanation, whatever else you need to include. There's another model for building paragraphs called the meal plan. Really, really similar idea. Main idea, the evidence, the analysis that you're going to give, and the meal plan adds in a link. There are 2 ways that people talk about that link. One way is that it overtly ties back to the thesis. The other way is that it provides the bridge into the next paragraph. So you can think about that as well. Feel free to look that up if that's interesting to you. There are tons of models out there. And then your conclusion will again go over the main points, give your reader concluding remarks. All right, that's the end of this lecture. I hope it's been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you on the discussion boards.